Capstone friends. I wanted to just hop on and talk to you about the first link in my capstone, which was guidance on what to look for when choosing a book for a read-aloud. My technology skills are pretty weak, so I can't add a lot of pictures and graphics to my capstone, but I can talk to you about it because I've been doing a morning meeting for the last 4 weeks just like this, so might as well give it a try. Okay, what to look for when choosing a book. So first, congratulations. We are doing online learning right now, and many of us have been separated or unchained from our purchased curriculums, which gives us a lot of freedom to use our teacher muscles and our intuition to find the right books that match our students' needs, that are interesting, that are visually appealing, that lead to those really good conversations. On the downside, I don't know about any of you, but our libraries are all locked and closed, and my classroom is locked up tight. I have the pile of books that I was going to bring home to kind of ferret out for my capstone and to do a little extra stuff, but certainly not the resources that I could have to put together really good, the best books for the best matches to my students. So I have to make do sometimes and just do the best we can, and I think that that's good enough. That really is. Okay, so having said that and knowing the limitations of our resources and that we know our students best and know what kind of conversations we want to spark, I wanted to go over the list of what to look for when choosing a good book for an interactive read-aloud. So the first thing is match instruction to the child's development needs and interests. So just speaking from myself personally, I teach integrated preschool, so I have typically developing 3 and 4-year-olds and sometimes 5-year-olds, and I have developmentally delayed 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. Some of them have no language. Some of them on the developmental scale are more 12 to 18 months old. So when I'm choosing a read aloud for my entire classroom, I have to take all of those things into consideration. Sometimes the most beautiful, Caldecott award-winning book is just going to be too much for our students, and sometimes we have students who are super interested in a topic, and you can read above their attention span because and above what you might think fits for them, and that's okay. So it's going to be matching instruction to your child's developmental needs and interests. So what I wanted to say is that right before we went on, right before we closed our school, we were talking about rainbows and St. Patrick's Day, and I had done a little lesson on the things that plants need to grow, and we had planted shamrocks in little pots because it was attached to the theme of rainbows and St. Patrick's Day. So we already had an underlying exposure to seeds and plants and those sort of things. So I chose books that I already had that were also, this one just happens to also be by an award-winning artist. It's called A Seed is Sleepy, and this is one of the books I chose to do a read-aloud with because I could attach it to prior learning that we had done, and also because it had really cool pictures and I could differentiate. So we have the highlights of the story, and this is an informational text actually. So a seed is secretive, but then I have some scientific facts about it. So so I used this as one of my read-alouds. So it had books that are engaging and have educational potential. And so this had educational potential in my mind. It also reflected some of the developmental diversity in my classroom. I could read through and just do the overview, and I could also, now that I have Google Classroom up and running, I could have the opportunity to discuss some of the more scientific facts with my peer models. And my God, just look at these pictures. They have so many bright colors, and they're interesting and engaging, and give the opportunity for discussions. Reflect diversity. I don't know if you can see this. Yes, you can. A variety of genres and books that develop literary skills. Sometimes you're going to pull a book that has rhyming in it, and sometimes you're going to have a book that has repetition. In Owl Babies, which generally I pick because I love it, because it has a sentimental connection to me. I used to read this with my son and nephew, and when I sit there and I talk about it with my students, we talk about their big sisters and their big brothers. But this provides the opportunity, and they pick up really quickly. Bill always says, "I want my mommy." And so we have some interaction and some repetition. And again, really beautiful illustrations. But sometimes you want a book with ABCs in it, or a counting book. I don't have it with me, but I have this beautiful book that's ocean themed, Over in the Ocean. And we will read it over and over and over again, which is something you want to do with your students. And all of the research says that it's really great for building literacy skills, but they also have to want to hear it, and they want to have to get excited about it. And if it's not a book that you're excited about, they're not going to be excited about it, because you have to sell it just like you would sell a new car or anything like that. And books that promote conversation. Number 5, books that can promote conversations. So we had already planted our shamrock seeds. We had already talked about what seeds need to grow. We had read this text about the seeds and all the different kinds of seeds, and I'd done a lesson on that. And then, God bless my mom, she drove this over to me. What will grow was the next read aloud that I chose to do with my students. Now, this was not like award-winning. It was not on the library's recommended top 100 books for best read-alouds or most diverse or a Caldecott Award winner, but it fit my needs. So we were able to connect, and some of my students sent me little pictures. I was so excited. This has seeds in it, just like our other book did, and they were able to make that connection. And then so we read this one, and this goes from the seeds to the plants. And I was able to have some open-ended questions and pause and let them answer them. And one student who was sending me pictures of his walk in his neighborhood had found some worms, and it sent me a picture of himself with the little worms in his hand. So I knew that this would connect with him. So that was also another reason why sometimes I choose the book, because it has a connection. Now, I returned it already to the person who loaned it to me, but there was this ridiculous book about chickens in the library. And my friends can get rambunctious sometimes during read-alouds, and this story was about a librarian, and the chicken came to the story time, and then more chickens came to the story time, and then more children came to the story time, and oh my goodness, what was going to happen? Well, my class already knows that my sister is a librarian. My class already knows that I am terrified, phobically terrified of chickens because we've shared what we're afraid of and what we're not afraid of. Because my sister, the librarian, had locked me into the chicken coop when I was little. So we had some history between us as a class community that made this book, which was really silly and not the best book, but was, funny. A choice that I knew would resonate with them, and the feedback I got from the parents was, connected to that. So they got it. Anyway, so books that promote conversations, and that's what I was looking for in this book. I wanted them to talk about what story time looks like when people are too close together, or when everybody is talking and no one's listening, and we've got the librarian up there with her megaphone and she's yelling and the chickens are flapping their wings, and then she solves a problem. So opportunities for good conversations. And then unfamiliar words worth learning. You don't have to stop and pick out 3 vocabulary words every single time. And because this isn't attached to standards, specific standards that we're teaching toward in our curriculums, we can as professionals discern which words are valuable to stop and talk about, which things are valuable when it comes to sharing this story. I hope this was helpful to you. If you want a list of books, you can Google the Caldecott Award winners. You can also Google the American Library Association, which has really comprehensive lists of books. I highly suggest getting on YouTube and watching these books be read, because when I look at a book purely on paper, as opposed to when I've got it in my hand and I'm thinking about it and looking at it and really engaging in it, sometimes I buy the books and I'm not really happy with them. So those were some of the things I wanted to say about the document that I shared with you about how to find good books. And then there's finding the book that's not the best book and making it work for you. So today I jumped on and we were doing transportation, and I just, this is not a great book. This is not the book I would want to read about buses, but it's the one I had. So I made it work, because that's what we do as teachers. We get really creative. And so I looked through this one and we did a little picture walk about it, and there's some repetition in it. And we talked about our friends, mommies who are bus drivers, and I made it relevant. So I think that's all I wanted to say about this. I hope this was helpful to you. If it wasn't, I apologize, and I will think of something else to do. I think one of the most important things is that you have an emotional connection to the book, and that you create an emotional connection for the child to have with the book. So Corduroy, I remember my mom reading to me, and it's listed under books that have diversity, and I think it's because our sweet little main character, Lisa, is not Caucasian, and in the 1970s that wasn't something that you saw a lot in children's books. I think you see it way more now, but I love the story. And so I talked to my students about, loving a stuffed animal why would Lisa want a stuffed animal that looks used in the store, and about being home and about taking care of things and those sort of things. And Mouse Mess, which I read to my children, and they loved it. In fact, we had a conversation at the kitchen table the other day, and they could relive the book. So I ordered it on Amazon so that we could share it with my students. It's in general, it's a great book to start, but it has an emotional connection too. So use those emotional connections that you have with your students, as in the chicken book, and share why the books are important to you, and then share them with your students. All right. I'm going to say goodbye now. Bye-bye.